My name is Christine Roland, and this is my response to Hinterland. I jeté over prairie dog burrows, cropped hair weightless, streaks of yellow fluttering on end, ankles screaming when I land. Run. Birds all take flight in the same direction, towards the horizon. That's how I know. Run. Knees high, lungs burning, grass whipping my thighs. Run. Clouds shift, white highlights, turquoise smeared between plumes, deep blues the shade of my sweater, the shade of the bruises beneath it. A funnel forms, it's big. My body protests, my mind ignores. Run. I'm nowhere near home. Sneakers arc in a white blur. The storm presses my eardrums, warbles sounds. I don't hear the grass smash. It crunches beneath my weight. I don't hear the wind blow. It batters against my chest. A dusty road appears on the horizon, a barren strip in a wild of green. This is the farthest I've ever ventured. Walked and walked, waiting for Pa to take his nap after he finished the bottle. So now I gotta run. I reach the curved road and leap across, faster to go straight. Me, the arrow that bisects the clef note. I tear through the brush on the other side. Threads and skin catch on sharp bristles. More birds lift into the sky. How painless it is for them to flee. There it is, a rotten tooth jutting from the horizon. Tears smear my temples, fear and relief together. I clear another burrow. In the air, that's where we collide. A grating shriek, a clipped squeak, feathers pirouette in the wind. As we fall, I shove the bird away and thrust myself away. I messed up there. Okay. As we fall, I shove the bird and thrust myself away. I don't roll, but land hard on my back, magnetized to the earth. I can't breathe. My lungs refuse no matter how hard I plead. Why was I running? Swirling around and around, clouds narrow in. Oh yes, I have to get up. But where are my legs? Zigzags of blinding white creep across the cloud, at first converged, then branched like a colossal tree. Or are they roots? A crash, so loud it startles the air back into me, pops my ears, rips me from the ground, brings me back to life. My hair twirls in the dancing atmosphere. Cool air presses down, hot air rises up. Debris speckles the sky. I hear every sound. The wing waving from the ground caught in a gust. I crawl to the bird and kneel on one knee. Please, please don't be dead. Birds carry diseases, Mama had told me. I slipped Grammy's pink hanky from my pocket, like she used to do, kept them hidden in her sleeve or couch cushions. I cradle the bird in upturned arms. Legs stick out like a snowman's arms, stiff. It doesn't move. The spotted plumage of its underbelly quickens, deep browns laced with amber liquor. Breath? Wind? No time to decide. I point myself to the road and press the bird against my chest and soar. My sweater parachutes, glides me forward. Behind, the funnel kisses the horizon, eats the grass, spits out the creatures who couldn't escape. Rain needles my face. The tooth rises from the horizon, grows into a decaying house, sagging roof, fading paint, safe cellar. I reach the porch as sirens blare. He's there, in the lazy boy, arm dangling over a handle of rye. Pa! He can't hear me. I tug at his sleeve with one hand, then push, then shake. Pa, it's comin'! His massive palm grips my forearm, flings me away. A rocking chair takes the porch railing with it. Yet, Pa slumbers. I could drag him, but I don't. The windows go now. Violent gusts thrust me to the floor. My throat aches, a scream ballooning inside. I force it down. One hand on the bird, I drag myself with the other. Nearly there. Pieces of the past whirl around me. Floorboards, picture frames, lace doilies. I reach the cellar door. grip the handle. It flaps open. Down the stairs, I take flight. Everything stills. Deep underground, pressed against my heart, the bird curls into me.
My name is Emma, and this is my creative response to Hinterland. Girl in the corner of her own painting. Girl so lonely that her painting isn't even about her. Consider the land. Consider the empty space. You can't see her eyes, but it's hard to imagine her looking at the bird. Tell me how it died. Tell me how she found the cloth. Tell me how she found the cloth, knew to carry it, felt the fragility of fluted bones, and questioned the strength of her own. Why are they both alone? No one sang her to sleep, but she woke to birdsong every morning. Childhood is the land she leaves behind. It was a non-migrant bird. It would have died here someday. Girl in the forefront of her own painting. Girl so giving that her painting isn't even about her. Consider the land, how the light fills the space. You can't see her eyes, but it's hard to imagine her looking away.
Hi, my name is Catherine, and this is my response to Hinterland. That which remains unpainted. She holds close the life of something larger than herself, one of a murmuration. This starling of feathers, handled with kerchief care, slicked under 2 coats of oil paint, a field emptied of flowers, emptied of the Florida coast. What of the impending winter spills from blue sweater to scuffed shoes? What realm of temporary disregard, of magic reality, of beginning, does she look to while holding so carefully the end of something else?
Hi, my name is Evan Lepore, and I will be reading A Walk with Young Miss Lane in response to Hinterland. The small prairie home was laid out on a plain in Kansas. In its driveway, a 10-year-old black Dodge Ram truck was parked. Its paint was just beginning to fade. From the outside of the home, which is painted white, gave the impression of being one of those old prairie homes. But really, it was only built shy of about 15 years ago. Inside the home, the walls were also painted white. The man that had done nothing to the house since the day he... Oh, can I redo that line? Yeah. Okay. The man had done nothing to the house since the day he and his 2 children had moved in 5 years ago. Up until 10:02, it was a bright, sunny day. Then clouds quickly slept in and formed the overcast sky. Young Miss Kane had yet to wake up. Ever since her 12th birthday, she had begun sleeping in, and as the months rolled along, the later she slept. Her room appeared dimly lit. It was disorganized and messy, not enough to be disgusting, but a pleasant amount of clutter. She was now awake, but not out of bed, 2 distinctly different things. She stared at the ceiling and then turned over to see the time on her phone. She then rolled over to the other side of the bed, looking out the window and seeing the gray skies. Flinging the covers over, she stood up out of bed and proceeded to get dressed. She picked up clothes to match the day, a blue sweatshirt, blue jeans, and her old white low Converse. While brushing her teeth, she looked at nothing but the reflection of herself, turning her head side to side. When finished, she then went downstairs. No pictures were on the wall, nor anywhere around the house. Miss Kane laid out on the couch. Her father was sitting at the dinner table on his computer, scrolling through Yahoo News, wearing a tattered t-shirt and an old pair of French terry gray shorts. He looked good for his age. Looking up from his computer, he peeks at his daughter. Good morning, he said to her. Good morning, she plainly responded. Miss Kane sat up, bringing her legs up and resting her chin right between her knees. You slept in awfully late, her father told her. You're starting to be like your brother, now returning to his computer. Miss Kane shot him a hateful look, her blonde hair shaking from side to side. Would you like any breakfast? No, Miss Kane said. She had stopped eating breakfast about a year ago. Have you figured out what you'd like to do today? No, she said. Well, you could read a book, build some Legos. You know I don't like it when you play video games too much, and you've already watched enough movies this week. I've already read all the books I've got here, and I've read my favorite ones twice. Okay, what about your Legos? Eric's friend broke them all. You have the directions. Why don't you rebuild them? I already built them. I don't want to build them again. Well, you could go outside. The conversation was becoming tedious. Her father gave up and went back to looking at his computer. Miss Kane let out a deep breath through her nose and got up to get a drink of water, finishing it in 3 large gulps. Without a word, she sped towards the door, and her father asked where she was going. She told him outside. She stopped just out on the porch to look out at the open plain, surveying its consistent pattern. Miss Kane began to walk. Her chin was up, and she was looking up at the gray sky, looking like blue mud tracks with blotches of white where the distorted sunlight could just barely pierce through. The sky looked like this all the way along the horizon line. Grass crunched under her feet as she walked at a steady pace with no destination in mind. All that held her gaze was the sky. She thought about what was above those thick blotches of clouds. There were no planes she could hear, nor helicopters, just the sound of her footsteps. Miss Kane spun around and was now walking backwards. She noticed the house had gotten a mile away from her. She stopped to look, the wind blowing her hair to the side. She closed her left eye and brought her thumb and pointer finger up to her right eye, making a U shape. Thinking for a moment, she took one last look and then smashed her thumb and finger together and making a ksh noise. This made her laugh. Now she took off going the opposite direction of her white home, the tall grass hitting her legs, the sound of the wind shaking her eardrums. Nothing in front of her changed. It was still the grassy plain and the gray sky. A few minutes went by before she finally started to slow down. Her breaths became slow and heavy, her speed waning. Oh, what she would give for a horse. She turned around again. The house was even smaller, but she didn't think to crush it again. She'd already done it before. A blast of thunder roared above. She flinched and looked up. It was the same gray sky looking down at her. She heard a sound behind, a rustle of the grass and a faint thud. She looked down and saw a mourning bird laying dead in the grass. A minute she stared at it, and then dropped to her knees. She had a pouty face, but no tears were falling down. Slowly she went down and laid next to the bird. There was about 2 inches between them. She furrowed her brow and looked into its glazed black eye. All that moved were that fluttered. Oh dang, sorry.
That's okay.
All that moved were its feathers that fluttered against the wind. Unsure of what to do, she turned her head up at the sky in case the bird might have been embarrassed or simply scared to make any sudden move. But she looked back down, and the bird hadn't moved, and its glazed black eyes were still staring at her. Disappointed, she let out a sorrowful gasp and clutched the grass that lay between her and her dead friend. She chuckled and thought she's only known the bird is dead. With that, she tore up the grass that she had clasped to and lifted her arm up in the air, letting go and watching the grass trail off out of her frame of view. She got back onto her knees and pulled out a pink handkerchief she'd stolen from her grandmother's house before leaving to spend the summer with her father. Delicately, she picked up the bird with the handkerchief, bringing it closer to her face, and her other hand now supporting the small head. Turning it over in her 2 hands, she studied its black and gray-brown fur, fascinated by its irregular and fractal patterns. She looked back up at the horizon line, wanting it to be somehow different, but it was still the same as every other time she looked before. Then she took a deep breath of acceptance and brought herself to her feet, turned around, looked at the small house on the prairie, and began walking back. She didn't run, but it felt like a shorter distance than when she first came outside. So as not to bring any unwanted attention to what she carried in her hand, the sound of her shoes hitting the porch reminded her that it would be wise to enter back into the house as quietly as humanly possible. She lighted her step, grabbed the doorknob, and drifted back into her home. Her father was sitting right where he had been the last time we had seen him. His need for control was so much a part of his personality that the habit had grown to subtlety, but by no means was he ever embarrassed, nor very aware that he allowed it to enter the most basic and small interactions between most people, and most of all, his young children. The thought of what to do with this indefinitely dormant bird had not yet come across the mind of young Miss Kane. Instead of heading upstairs to her room, she made the rather dumb decision to take a seat in the living room. Noticing that she was preoccupied in trying to hold something in her hands, her father got up and walked towards her. Attempting to conceal the dead bird, she wrapped it up into the pink handkerchief. Her father now stood about 2 feet from her, arms crossed. "Excuse me, young lady. What is that you have in your hand?" he contemptuously asked. "It's nothing," said young Miss Kane. "Okay, then show me." "I said it's nothing." Her father turned his head to the side and widened his dark brown eyes. "Let me see," he said, and this time raising his voice. She unwrapped the bird for her angry father to see. His face made it obvious that he was disgusted. "Where the hell did you get that?" "I found it outside. It fell from the sky." "And you thought it a good idea to bring it into the house?" All she could do was look down. There was nothing to say. Her father's demeanor had changed. His eyes had become glassy and his breathing hoarse. "You didn't hurt the bird, did you?" "No, I found him like this," she shouted at him. "Well, why aren't you upset or crying, for Christ's sake? When I was your age, I couldn't even bear the sight or even the thought of a dead animal," he said louder. "It's those damn movies and those video games your mother lets you play." It was then that Miss Kane had begun to cry. "Please, put it in the trash outside." She got up and went outside, but instead of doing what her father told her, she laid the bird gently on the grass next to the porch and waited a few minutes before going back inside. "Go wash your hands," her father told her when she came back in. While washing her hands, she again looked at her reflection in the mirror. Then, once she was done, had gone to bed. But she did not go to sleep. Instead, she waited till her father had for sure gone to bed. Let me redo that line. Instead, she waited till her father had for sure gone to sleep. Once the house had become silent and all the lights were turned off, she got out of bed. She stepped over and opened the closet and picked up a Converse shoebox. Quickly, she grabbed her shoes and snuck out of her room and went downstairs. She had brought her phone along to use as a flashlight. Next, she went into the garage to get a shovel. Then, with purpose in her step, she went outside and found the bird right where she left it. The thick clouds were now gone, and the moon eliminated the need for the flashlight. All the stars in the sky could be seen. The Big Dipper took no effort to find. Miss Kane picked up her dead friend and put him into the Converse shoebox. She walked a little ways out and then began to dig. 15 minutes had gone by before she felt the hole was big enough. Tired, she wiped her brow with her arm and laid the shovel down. Then she picked up the shoebox and laid it in the hole. Pausing for a moment of silence, she took in the prairie. Pausing for a moment of silence, she took in the prairie and Pausing for a moment of silence, she took in the prairie and the stars, and then looked back down. "I'm glad to have met you. Most birds probably don't get to be buried." "I'm glad to have met you. Most birds probably don't get to be buried." She smiled, picked up a pocketful of dirt, and threw it on top of the box, then filled it in. Miss Kane walked back home to finally go to bed. She slept in the next morning.